Gang's Hexy. We are wrapping up the campaign game for Panzer battles, 11th Panzer on the Chir River. Um, Man, what a blast! What excitement too for the last three turns. Okay, so let's recap where we were going initially with this game. 11th Panzer is the fire department in this campaign. All the German infantry and Luftwaffe ground troops that are spread along the Chir River here and quite thin, to be honest with you. Um, they literally comprise a very thin blocking force. I mean, the defensive factors for their infantry aren't quite as good as the Soviet ones are, and their attack factors for the most parts aren't either. They're very thinned down. So 11th Panzer will come on and try to stem the points where the Soviet mechanized and armored are breaking through. And then amidst this thing, about 75% of the 1st Tank and 5th Mech will eventually arrive on the battlefield from over yonder. It's dice roll. They're going to come on regardless, but a dice roll will determine when they arrive. Fortunately, in this game here, it was the 3rd activation chit on the 4th turn is when they came on, and they came on in mass. And they came on in mass way over here in A, on that edge of the map right there. And they just come right down the road. And now I had no idea. I did not look at the Soviet reinforcement as far as what entry area they went in. I just identified that they start on turn 4 as their possibility of when they're coming in. Okay, so initially, we decided to punch in 2 locations with the Russians. Over here along these crossings, and then right down the middle road there. Now, you'll notice none of the roads going north and south are major roads. They're all secondary. They're all minor roads. The major roads are all east and west down here down at the bottom. And then there's a few up here by Surovikinyo. And then there's a major rail line. So the Russians start to punch with the guards over here to the left, and then what units of the 1st Guards tank, and 5th Mech are on the map. So when I brought the 11th Panzer on, I split them. I sent their mechanized infantry groups over here to a town that I'm going to attempt to talk about, where this town is in these crossings. And then I sent their armored units to where most of the 1st Tank, 5th Mech was, right here in the middle, because that's where they were putting all their pressure. Okay, they got chewed up, but they did some chewing of their own, and the fight stayed right here for 4 turns. Okay, there was no progression made. And then the Russians started to get some slightly overwhelming numbers. And I thought to myself, after about 3 turns, I'm like, okay, let's analyze the objectives here. How can the Germans, because it was apparent to me that they weren't going to move north and take any of these victory locations like Surovikinyo. They weren't going to take Hill 129 back. They weren't going to take this town and these crossings back, which they actually not ended up taking it, but they took one hex that the Russians were not able to respond to. This was a motorized unit late in the game, moved up here. And supply in this game, like I say, you don't have to be on roads. You can trace through gaps and everything, okay? Then I had to determine, okay, I'm going to get 11th Panzer off the front line. And I brought them all back here to this intersection until I could figure out what the Soviets were going to do, what the Russians were going to do. And I left the motorized units over here. I left them in the fight around this area here, because there was a lot of guards units here that were attempting. But like I say, the Germans actually took the 1 hex of this town, which canceled out this victory location. But on the last turn, the Russians were able to take it back, so they got 1 for that. And then I realized, okay, well, the rest of the 1st Guards tank and the 5th Mech come on. This fight was going to get heavy over here. So I had to repurpose the units that were sitting here for 11th Panzer. Pretty much all but 1 were reduced, and move them to these river crossings. And then when the Russians got to go, they were going with everything they could. I had scattered Luftwaffe infantry or ground troops over here to delay their movement, try to make them overrun or make them attack and burn a movement phase and an attack phase. And then on the last turn, I decided, okay, there is the potential for the Russians to break through. Let's pull some of the units off the lower river crossings, one in each stack, best we could, and let's start zone controlling this highway right here in case Russian armor or mech does break through and they can get to that road. I already got my German 10 strength points off the map over here 2 turns ago. So that was accounted for. There's nothing in the rules that says it has to be armored or infantry. So I got artillery, I got reconnaissance, I got some 88s off the map, or infantry guns off the map, and some pioneers off the map. So I got the 10 steps. That's worth 10 victory points. And amazingly enough, that's a bit. So last turn, the first 3 German chits that were drawn were 11th Panzer. So after their chits were drawn, there was no more movement for them because there is no all units chit for the Germans. The only thing they had left was their non-11th Panzer units. The last 2 Russian chits that needed to be drawn were all units and then the first tank, 5th mech. So they definitely had the advantage in the chit draw at the end. So on the final German chit, which was the non-11th Panzer, I withdrew everything I could from the front lines to try to zone of control out this area here so that just in case these mobile units could break through, there would be speed bumps that they would have to deal with. Well, lo and behold, the 11th Panzer units that were sitting here on this crossing, these crossings right here, they got pushed away, but they did just enough. And I moved a bicycle unit down in here to get adjacent so that these units this in here would not be able to exploit during the exploit phase, or they couldn't overrun. And lo and behold, the Russians drew no air in the last activation. The mechanized units that were there was no artillery support for them. They don't have much anyhow. So game over. Germans exited 10 units. They held the Russians up along the Salon River here. Okay. They managed to disrupt 1 victory location for the Soviets right here in the middle. But it wouldn't have mattered anyhow because the Russians had 4 victory locations captured for 4 points. The Germans had 2, but they got 10 points. And I want to make sure. They had 10 points. Boo-boo. Boo-boo. Uh-oh. Guess what, guys? Recalculation. The Germans only get 1 victory point. So the Germans only got 1. Where's the other one at? 1, 2, 3. Oh, Lord, I had this wrong. It's a Soviet victory, 4-3, because the Germans only get 1 victory point for exiting 10 units. The Germans needed to take 1 more objective. What an epic failure. There you go. My second scenario was titled Strategy Amiss. Well, guess what? I completely missed it. Misread the victory rules. What a shame. But what a great game, man. This game has so much replayability. It's not fun. You can change your approaches with the Soviets and the Germans on this. But this was a good fight. Even though playing it, both sides by myself solo, still a great matchup, I thought. So, all right, there you go. Panzer battles, 11th Panzer on the Chir. 4-3 Soviet victory. I think we're going to move to Stalingrad next. All right, we'll talk to y'all soon. See you.